Hi there, in this video I want to share with you how you can create some distant gunshot sound effects without real gunshot samples. So recently I had a viewer message me and he was asking, I created this gunshot sound and it sounds great, but I want to make it sound like it's from 10 meters away and 20 meters away. And every time I put a filter on it or I just change the volume, it just doesn't sound like it's coming from a distance. And I said, yeah, it probably won't work because there's actually two things that you need to create this kind of distant gunshot sound without, especially if you don't have these kind of recorded gunshot samples. So with that said, let me jump into my project here so I can show you what those two things are to create these distant gunshot sound effects. All right, so here we are inside of Reaper. And like I said, if you're going to do a distant gunshot sound effect, ideally, of course, you'd be having recordings that were recorded at different distances so that you can have those recordings and you can use those as part of the sound effect. But if you don't have that, here's what you can do. You're going to need two things. One is your gunshot sound. So in this instance, I had one that is right here. I had this gunshot sound that I took from a library, and it sounds like this. Actually, without the effects, it sounds like this. And then the second thing that you're going to need is a tail sound effect. And for me, I have mine that sounds like this. All right, if you don't know how to create a tail sound effect, let me walk you through really quickly how to do it. I do have a full tutorial and I'll make sure to link it up above, but just so you have a basic idea of how I created it. All right, so the way that I like to create my tail sound effects here is I do them inside of Whoosh. And inside of Whoosh, what you can do is you can load different samples. Inside of here, I think I loaded a bunch of like wind samples and noise samples and just like blowing through the microphone or just generating wind sounds with synths. And basically, I drag those samples into here. In terms of like the engine here, you can see the symmetry usually starts at halfway here, but I put it all the way down. And what that does is that it speeds up through and then it creates kind of this transient at the midpoint here. And then you have this long tail afterwards. And that's basically how I create my tail sound. So if we play it now. All right, so that's what it sounds like. Now, of course, I would add a lot more processing and effects on there to kind of tweak it up a little bit, but that's basically what it sounds like. So the sound effects I actually have here, I've already kind of designed them. These are from my Explosion sound pack, so they're already kind of ready to go. I dragged and dropped these into here, and all I did here was a bit of processing. So when I find the Haas effect works really well on tail sound effects. So if let's just take these off so we can see how it's affecting the sound. So this is what it was like without any effect on. Right, it's very big, very huge, which is fine. It can work. I added now the Haas effect. Right, it makes it sound a lot more wide. Kind of makes the sound bounce from one speaker to the other. And then I added some EQ because I wanted to sound distance. Now, if you have the full frequency spectrum present, it's going to sound very close to you. If you cut out some of the lows and some of the highs, it's going to start to feeling a bit more distant. So that's what I did here. And it just feels a lot more distant. Now, if I can combine that with my gunshot sample here, and by the way, for the gunshot sample, I did the exact same EQ here, just so, again, it feels distant. Now I have this sound, if you put them together. Right, so the viewer that messaged me, he was saying, if you just add an EQ, which is what I did here, it doesn't sound very good. So if we play it, like it sounds okay, but it still sounds like it's closer, it's very thin or something. It sounds like something's missing. And the thing that's missing is the tails. And when you put it together, this is what you get. Right, and this actually also works with different tail sounds. So here I have a different tail sound, sounds like this. Right, so the tail is a lot longer, so it feels like it's a lot more distant or like in a bigger field. And the other thing that you can do here, and I have a third example here, is that if you bring down the volume, if you play around with the volume between the tail and the actual gunshot, you can get different, you can have the feel of like it's from different distances. So if I play it here. Right, so I really brought down the sound of the gunshot here, and I brought up the sound of the tail. So it still feels like it's distant. You can still hear this gunshot. And again, you can play around with the EQ if you want it to feel a little bit different, or like cut out some of the highs maybe. Maybe you want a bit more. Right, but playing with the EQ, playing with the volume, and kind of balancing that with the tail, you should be able to place a gunshot at different distances. All right, so this is great if you're doing just individual gunshots, but it doesn't work for every type of gunshot. Sometimes you just want the click or the pop of the gunshot, and to do that, there's a few things you can do, so let me show you that right now. All right, so one of the things I like to use when I'm doing distant gunshot sound effects is to have fireworks, and fireworks can work really well for having that kind of distance and that kind of pop. So if we have a listen to it right here, right, it can easily sound like it's like this distant gunshot sound. So this was taken on Canada Day near my house, and I just had some of these individual fireworks going. So what's great about this is that the tail's already kind of baked in and you already have the pop in there. Now, in terms of like actually placing this in a redesign, then it's just a matter of like playing around with the EQ. Maybe I want less highs, more lows, but from there, I can just basically go and tweak it some more. Now, if you want to see how I actually put this into action and actually put it into a redesign, I made a whole video about where I did an explosion sound redesign for Modern Warfare 2, I think it was. So I'll put that in the screen above if you're interested in seeing it. If you have any questions, comments, leave it down below. And that's it. I think that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.